to address navigating evolving energy landscape and what are the emerging trends and how do we strategically position ourselves. First of all, I'm deeply apologetic for not being there in person, but I'm very grateful for CHT to have given me this opportunity to conduct this virtually. I hope I'm not much of a bother to the panelists, and we will have an engaging discussion. Let's work towards that. So today, as we meet, we are at a pivotal juncture where the world of energy, and particularly for India, the imperatives today must have unprecedented economic growth, and we should also realize the vision of a Viksit Bharat in 2047, which means a developed India by 2047. And it is the energy demand which is likely to double in the next 2 decades. So we do need all kinds of energy, and we do need all kinds of interventions to make sure that we reach that goal. Concurrently, as we go forward, we must also lead the change and the charge towards a sustainable energy future, as also meet our net zero commitments. This dual mandate of energy security and transition is what is our current strategic challenge. And in the first session, you all heard the tenor and the tone and the strategic planning that all the leaders in the refining, petrochemicals, catalysts, gas business all together put it. And I think what came out was a crude to cash. And let's see how we tailor this panel to work towards the positive direction of getting these leaders both in the refining sector, the technology sector with UOP being there, the catalyst, UOP and Topso, the catalyst leader, Ketjen, as well as the strategic planning of S&P Global brings on the table. I'm going to move straight to the panel, and I warmly welcome MD NRL, Mr. Bhaskar Phukan. Thank you for being there for at least the time that you don't go and sign your MOU. So let me pose the first question for you. That we heard in the morning, and we heard these sessions, that looking at diversification of product slate into petrochemicals or specialty chemicals could be a strategy in the long term, which will hedge us against potential variations in the transportation fuels, as well as looking for making more cash in the business. You run a refinery in the Northeast, which is a strategic region for the country, and the expansion, which is taking it from 3 million to 9 million, along with a blend of some petrochemicals, is having a lot of challenges, I'm very sure. What is, from the strategic perspective, how do you see, even going forward, where do you see refineries which are catering to national, regional needs, positioning themselves in a more competitive manner going forward? So the first question to Mr. Bhaskar, if you could address this, please.
Thank you, madam. And thanks to CST for having me here. This question we ask ourselves all the time. In the phase of transition, how we can calibrate our strategy, how quickly we have to go for destruction of our product slate, which is now heavily skewed towards auto fuel, to something else, maybe petrochemical, as in the morning, Prabdaji was saying, actually we are going towards more and more cash. Maybe in the form of API or in the form of pharmaceutical ingredients. So there are many pathways which are presented before us, but at the same time, we have to be very conscious of the fact that if you go back to 2000, our primary energy demand was something around 430 MTOE. Now there is a general consensus that by 2030, this primary energy demand will be around 1,140 kind of figure that we are looking at. So even if you see the participation of the liquid fuel will come down, particularly aggressive intervention of the gas-based economy, still we will have this fuel demand coming. Maybe the regional distribution will greatly alter. Looking at all this thing, we have to calibrate our effort for getting away from the auto fuel production to other products. So we are really looking at maybe some petrochemicals, some smart chemicals. We are also venturing into chemicals produced out of biomass, like acetic acid, then to acetic anhydride, maybe to paracetamol also we can go. That kind of vision is already there, and a lot of projects are on the drawing board as we progress, but we also need to figure out that we have to be the last man standing. That means till the time market wants the fuel, we should be there to supply it. So we are calibrating very, very carefully. Secondly, the cost component has to be very, very minutely looked at. See, most of the people, what they take a decision on, when it comes to cost cutting, we only look at the human being actually. You reduce, you automate, you reduce people, then you cut cost. Maybe we are missing a point or two there. To me, having operated the refinery for so long, the best way to do a cost cutting is to make the refinery reliable. I will stop at that. Maybe when you come for the next round, I will have something more to add.
Thank you, Bhaskar. I think you made a very good point. We need to be the last man standing. We need to be there to meet the demand. That's very important. When you couple the decision making of going into several other products, that remains the commitment to the market. And yes, in terms of cost, and we will move on to that as well. I will move on to Director Refineries HPCL, Mr. Bhartan. HPCL has been adopting and has adopted for the first time in India a very highly energy or hydrogen intensive but great distillate bearing bottom upgradation facility in your expansion project at Vizag. Similarly, there are many other firsts which HPCL has undertaken in terms of making decisions and changing configurations, looking at technology, looking at how to position themselves in the future in terms of the demand side as well as how to supply. So what in your view is your strategy that the shaping of tomorrow, the reshaping of the energy landscape tomorrow, what are the other interventions that you think would be there for the reckoning of the refiners in this era of shifting demand, supply, as well as new technologies coming on for adoption?
Thank you, Madam. Good morning, good noon to all my fellow panelists and esteemed dignitaries. It's always a pleasure to be a part of Energy Technology Meet. So straight coming to the question, I will start with the demand-supply situation, which we all feel are continuously changing. But if you just look back, see for the last 20 years what has happened in India, it's in one direction, that is the demand keeps increasing. But to the credit of all the refiners here, we have been meeting the demand also, and slightly supply is ahead of the demand curve. And definitely I believe this will continue to quite some time. And more than this, I will not elaborate because we have a number of reports which come, all of us see. So we will leave it there for the analysts to take it from there. I will touch upon some of the products, give some key examples of how each product is changing. Take for an example LPG. LPG demand is continuously growing and we are continuously increasing the import. So what are we doing to increase the production? That is question number one for us. And we talk about electrification, we talk about piped natural gas, but they are all only adding and they are not replacing. That is the main point to be noted. So the key fuel continues to be growing. Now come to transportation fuel, MS and ATF. Here again the direction is single. Definitely in the immediate future and in the midterm. Subsequently, there can be some different opinion, but there is for a refiners, we cannot let down such opportunities. So the transportation fuel, ATF and MS is definitely in single direction. When it comes to diesel, yes, there may be a slight oversupply production now, and this is going to continue in the near term. But if you see beyond 2032 or 2033, if we don't add capacities now, at that time we will, again, there will be a gap that may come. Come to the other special value-added products or special products like solvents, high paraffinic, low paraffinic, low aromatic, high aromatic. There is a n number of specialty products that are possible from crude, and today India imports most of them. So I know many of us are entering into such areas also, including the active pharma ingredients and so on and so forth. 5 to 10% of the refinery, I think we should be concentrating on that, which gives very good value. Probably process intensification is required to put such plants in the existing footprint. Come to again the traditional oldest fuel oil. We eliminated fuel oil from all our new projects, but the market still asks for more and more. And the projections given in certain reports are that's going to continue where it is for several, at least for 2 decades from now. Now when the marketing comes and asks me, how are you going to supply? Good margin is there, why are you not supplying? I don't have an answer right now. Having spent last 10 years in extinguishing their product, now we'll have to rethink on how do we do that. That is one more. And bitumen, which is a simple product, all of us can make it very easily. It depends on some simple crude selection or minor process modifications, which is also continuing and which gives good margin as a company as a whole. The last 2 products are not as a refinery as a whole for GRM, but as a company as a whole, it gives very good business. So when we see all these products supply demand, in main fuels, I'm not seeing not much of a challenge. The challenge is actually how do we keep up pace with the demand number only. Now come to the value-added products, because we want to insulate from the pricing up and down that is going to happen in the coming years. So we have taken a big leap in the petrochemicals. So the new greenfield refinery, we have gone for a large 2.5, 2.6 million metric ton of petchem. In our existing refineries, probably we may not be able to do because of various constraints, but there also the specialties and niche petchem we will be able to do, which we are continuing to explore and we will do. So this is about the supply and demand in the business, what do we do. Now sustainability when we bring, it's easier said than done, but nevertheless, energy efficiency, making green hydrogen a reality. We have already installed India's first electrolyzer in refinery. One more refinery is installed now, and many of us are started the procurement through a outsourced model also, which are all close to a commercial, I will say it is close to a commercial break-even point we are there now. So that is one which may come in the future. CBG is being talked about since long. We are still not being able to cross the threshold which is required, which I believe definitely within the next 1 to 2 years, it must be happening. Once you do that, that becomes a good feed for fuel for us. And changing over to natural gas is anyhow taking place. So this is regarding the demand in the supply and the demand situation. Now come to the technological intervention. Technological intervention, I think, there is continuous development taking place. Thanks to all the process licenses, the scientists and researchers behind them. Every time you think something has reached a plateau, you hear something new. I think that is the way to go. We look forward for more such technologies, especially in process intensification, because we are thinking about reducing carbon, water, land. So all that we look at single-step processes and so on and so forth. I think technology is here to stay. The last point I would like to mention in technology is the catalyst and materials. Again, here, every time you think this is the maximum you will get. You will get a solution which is much better than what you are having now at a much better cost. So it continues to be exciting, and we look forward to be a part of this exciting journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bardhan. I think you're right and very well put. I think the ecosystem around the improvements is also developing and innovating. And I think those threads which give us solutions, whether it is material, it is catalysts, whether it is efficiency, or lowering of costs of many technologies, add on as we go in, and that's what we've seen over the years. It adds on the small and the large bits of it, such that we get more competitive as we go. And you're also right in the sense that if any large refinery investment to come on stream takes a certain a significant gestation period. And if we do not plan now and we do not start into investments again, the time cycle for the product to be there where the demand lies may be having a gap, which definitely, as a self-reliant nation in terms of complete reliability on all the petroleum products, we do not want to land up. Also true that, yes, you need to cash in opportunity, so it's a difficult decision whether to get rid of fuel oil or to keep that going such that when the demand is there and the margins, with respect to crudes are reasonable, you can kind of be there in terms of supply. So let's move on to now Mr. Matt Spalding, Vice President UOP. UOP has always been in the thick of the refining sector globally and has brought into on the table technological advances, innovations for the end user time and again. UOP also has been pioneering in many of the catalytic processes, as well as bringing in solutions in terms of modular supplies and so on and so forth. So if we were to ask, and if we are standing at a threshold where we need to look at how we go forward, what would UOP's strategy be to develop solutions to lower the investment threshold, and we accelerate that this conversion timeline to in refineries, particularly, let us say we have C2C strategies in the existing refineries, because we need to first work on the existing refineries while that might be a solution on the table in, let's say, 3 to 4 years, vis-a-vis a grassroots refinery which will have a larger gestation period. So, Mr. Spalding, would you like to please address that?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Vatika, and good morning, good afternoon all. So I think the Honeywell UOP role in the ecosystem is very clear. Our role is to help enable the adoption rapidly into the market, to be able to drive commercialization and to drive an economic cost of production. I heard some of the previous panelists talk about security on the supply side, helping to drive some of their investment strategies. The one thing that I see unique in the India market is that not only do the refiners and the producers look at making sure that they have security, but they do it at a price point which makes it sustainable. So when we talk about the energy trilemma in terms of security, sustainability, and equity, very much the equity piece is first and foremost in most minds. And I think that is critical to ensure that deployment of the technology becomes sustainable over time. We see a lot of commercialization of new technologies that ultimately need a lot of incentives or a high taxation policy to be able to make them credible. What you really need is technology which enables those, the production of those products to be done at a cost competitive point. So that's really where Honeywell UOP plays a role. I think India has a unique position to leverage some of the existing installed base. particularly around looking at diversification of feedstocks. So again, when you consider energy security, renewables can help drive sort of power to liquids. You have a huge supply of ethanol, which obviously is already being used in the industry to help produce a degree of security, because you can produce that locally. And then there has been a lot of talk about biomass in terms of how do you leverage biomass and biogas to, again, produce secure energy for India, particularly in the ongoing geopolitical environment. So that security piece is key. And so our role is working with partners and through our R&D arm to try and localize those technologies for deployment in the Indian market. So we're very much looking for those partnerships. We continue to work closely with our customers to develop those technologies specific for the Indian market, because the Indian market does have a unique ecosystem. And it is driven somewhat by policy, such as the National Green Hydrogen Mission, as well as the National Bioenergy Program. That helps stimulate the industry, but then you need to be able to do it at a price point which makes it sustainable. So that's really our role in how we can help enable that component of the market.
Thanks, Matt. You're right, and we'll go on to there as to what are the supporting policies in the next round, which will bring in the renewables and the other technologies which dovetail with the conventional refining. But I'm just going to ask you a follow-up question. Can you give us some innovations in the conventional hydrocarbon space? So if we were to look at that space in particular, would you be able to give us a sense of one or two interventions of technology which will improve our conventional refining and petrochemicals?
Thanks for the follow-up question. I guess when you look at the Make in India strategy, India's focus is on extending its manufacturing supply chain and diversifying and taking away from imports. So for us, that move into petrochemicals and downstream chemicals in India is critical. So how do we enable that part of the industry more cost effectively and efficiently so that you can compete against imported products or imported streams coming from China? So for us, one of our newer technologies is in the crude oil to chemicals piece. So naphtha to ethane and propane technology, which we believe helps unlock significant value in that crude to chemicals configuration, means that when you look at a naphtha cracker, there's a significant amount of downstream units which you need to build alongside that to address all of those byproducts that get produced through the naphtha cracker. Our technology enables the production of just an ethane feed stream from naphtha to be able to feed into an ethane cracker, which is a much more simple and lower cost conversion unit. So that's one example where we're helping to kind of stimulate that crude to chemicals market. It's been relatively nascent, and if we can do that, then we can unlock value in the downstream manufacturing supply chain for India to be able to compete against China.
Definitely, I think that makes a lot of sense in getting more out of more feedstock for petrochemicals at a more affordable cost. So I'll move on to Mr. Anders Olsen, Senior Vice President, Clean Air Topsoe. Topsoe's been also a very reliable partner for the refining as well as the fertilizer sector globally. And their cutting-edge processes have always been the hallmark of excellence, as well as shaping the efficiency aspects of the refining sector. Can you share with us some of the newer technologies which you're prioritizing for commercialization, particularly in the refining? I know how the Topsoe's been doing a lot of work in the renewable, in the clean space. But can we just address, to begin with, the commercialization which can be done for a few technologies in the refinery space, such that they can be future ready and they could also gradually shift towards more sustainability?
Yes, thank you very much, Radhika. Thank you for the kind words. Obviously, we have a large presence in India, and I would say ever-growing presence in India. Very, very excited about the future of Indian refining. So I'll just touch upon a few areas we see India particularly interesting right now. ranging from the, and it was mentioned in the first panel, the co-processing. IOCL was kind enough to mention that. It's the no capex version, the way to actually get started on the sustainability route. I think it was also said in the earlier panel, sustainability and the energy transition is not an option. It's a mandate. We have to get it done. So yes, we can dream that the products will be at the same price as fossil fuels, but it's probably not going to happen. There will be a premium, there will be a green premium. Our job is to get that premium as small as possible. And co-processing is definitely a way to get there. If we look into, just to mention two other options, I would say in a refinery, relatively low-hanging fruits. Most refineries today, certainly in India, have Klaus plants end with sulfur. There is a tremendous energy bound in the sulfur that you can unleash if you choose to make sulfuric acid instead of sulfur. We have a technology called WSA, again, proven in India, I think quite successfully. We had a presentation about it last year, but the amount of extra energy you get out of that basically amounts to something like 80,000 tons of CO2 per year that you don't emit because you can shut down a boiler by converting a Klaus plant to a WSA plant. So we think that's a low-hanging fruit that India is already started that journey, and we see definitely more opportunities. And I would say the hottest area right now in you could say globally and in Asia as a whole, and also in India, is SAF. SAF is really, really hot right now. We are seeing a lot of interest. We are signing a lot of deals also, and we definitely get the impression that's where the money lies. So I completely agree with Mr. Das in the first panel. We need to focus on where the money is, and right now the money is in SAF. And of course, we are very excited to be at the forefront of that, both on the catalyst and the technology side, to enable the refiners to really make a profitable operation producing SAF, and of course at the same time converting the sulfur to sulfuric acid. So those are the three I would like to mention, from the super low-hanging co-processing to the more say slightly more capex intensive solutions. So thank you, Vartika.
Thank you, Anders. I think all the three solutions are extremely important for adoption, and we'll get to the renewable part and what are the dynamics of it today and how we see tomorrow in a bit. I'll move on to Mr. Mark Nicholas Kedgen. Kedgen has had great expertise in hydroprocessing, and it is immensely crucial for optimizing the feedstock flexibility as well in terms of their products. If we were to put the context of India, wherein we are we have a growing reliance on crudes, which need different kind of pre-treatment. We may even have to pre-treat some unconventional kind of crudes, biofeeds, or any other technology which would help us maximize the distillate yield, because that is going to stay, the demand is going to stay, while we maintain the operating unit stability. And when we are looking at existing units and we are looking at different feedstocks and we are looking to make sure that these work reliably with increase of distillate yields, keeping our cycle lengths long, what would your solutions, your Kedgen solutions be to the refiner for such difficult feeds so that it can be adopted and they can have more reliability?
Thank you, Ms. Chairman. Let me start with the premise of the question, difficult feeds. Because from a catalyst perspective, it's all about chemistry and entropy. Somewhere in the middle is the catalyst. So when we look at different feedstock and feedstock variability, we analyze the crude intake for the Indian refineries from, say, 2019, when the world was still sort of stable, until today. Of course, there is a period of COVID in between, and then more recently we see shifts in crude oils. For India, it's remarkable. The average API, the weighted average API, the weighted is slightly higher. In other words, the crudes are a bit lighter, but the sulfur is almost the same. Actually, when you look at that flat line, you say, well, why is that? Well, that's pretty logical. We have refiners who are very competent in actually buying the crudes that fit their operations. But if you look a bit deeper, there's a couple of observations to make. Whereas typically 5 years ago, there were about 14 countries, 15 countries that would supply crude oil to India. Today, that's consolidated to a list of about 8. And guess what, everyone? I'm not sharing anything new here. Russia has become quite a sizable share in that. Stepping one level deeper, look at the different grades, the different types of crudes. Now there, it's very important not just to look at the overall average, because overall there is about 100 different crudes being consumed in India. That was around 2019, and today I think 25 year to date there's 106. But there's a big difference if you look at the crude selection by different refineries. HPCL, Mr. Bharatan, your guys have been going from 17 to 34 different crudes. So actually then you can ask, what is happening there? Why is that happening? Well, the obvious answer is there's money to be made. Certainly we can talk about which crudes are available, and should I be getting a crude from Nigeria or should I be getting a crude from Russia? But at the end of the day, it's about the money that you can make. So then I circle back to chemistry and the entropy. So Ketjen is not a process licensor. Ketjen works very closely with refineries who have installations that need to run, that need to operate reliably. So what we do is whenever there is visibility on a crude change, we work with refineries and say, what would this do to your yields in the FCC? What would it do to your cycle length in the hydrotreating units? And it's by looking at that specific level, again, the chemistry and the entropy, that is where we support the industry. And traditionally, we've employed, many of us here on this side of the table, many people in the front row have a lot of experience, but you may have seen the age gradient here in the auditorium. Madam Chairman, I don't think you're able to see that, but there certainly is an age gradient here in the auditorium, meaning in the back end, there's younger people there who may not bring that experience, who can just look at the chart and say, oh, this is what's going on. So what is really relevant, and we are employing that today, is that both for FCC operations and for hydrotreating operations, we look at real time, more or less real time. It doesn't have to be on the nanosecond, but more or less real time to see what is happening there. Because the engineering solution of select this crude, what should my catalyst be, what should my operating strategy for the hydrotreater, that's from the textbook. We can do that, others can do that, I think Topsoe could do that. But where the real money is made is in reliability and being able to respond to fluctuations as things go and to catch problems or identify risks early on. So it is the combination of that feedstock selection, understanding that chemistry, and then being able to respond. Now, before we move on, we look at alternative feedstocks, bio-oils, waste plastics. Last year in this auditorium, well, actually it was, I guess, in Bangalore, but at ETM 27, I made a pitch. I invited the audience to say, look at alternative feedstocks. For example, pyrolysis oil from plastics. I know quite a few, or there are a few very competent pyrolysis companies who were active in India who can produce oil for you. And the invitation I extended was, just go try it. If you have a bit of hydrogen and you have a reactor that can handle some extra feed, go try the hydrogen. I'm tempted to ask for a show of hands of how many companies in the audience have actually done the trial. Because until you do it, it seems like a mountain that there's no way to overcome that. But actually, what we have found is it's chemistry and it's entropy. So to get experience with that, to take it from the lab into the commercial operation, you're going to have to try it. So that my response to the question, sorry if it's long-winded, but is make sure you understand what crudes you're running, focus on reliability, and then don't be afraid, just go and do it.
Thank you. You're quite right. One must have the analysis in place upfront and the support to see what parameters to change, how the changes in the feedstock will affect, and how to quickly respond to that in terms of changing the parameters of the operating unit, whether it's FCC or hydro treatment. I think it's paramount because any gap that you have there, any slips that you have is cost and lower cash on hand. So thank you so much. I'll move on to Mr. Gaurav Srivastav, who is the regional head S&P Global. And I think you're going to have the most exciting part of your of the session in terms of looking in today's scenario where we are placed. We know that the US is totally few 100% on the fossil fuel drive. They're looking at doubling their LNG capacity in the next 5 years. There are oil discoveries by a lot of US companies all over the globe. There are also a lot of impetus in terms of expanding the global output of crude, apart from the pricing, which is just some other subject. But if we were to ask you, how do you see the geopolitics, the trade, the imbalance of trade, the balance of trade, the tariffs which have come into force, which are dynamic, and in every day we have to position ourselves to adapt in a manner which is beneficial to the nation, to those externalities which may be in our control and may not be in our control. So in that scenario, what in your view does it mean for the global crude oil market? And because the kind of crudes that we process, the kind of sourcing that we do have direct impact on our refineries, its profits, as well as its handling the existing assets with different kind of crudes. And in the manner of the global crude market, how would it impact the Indian refining sector? So we'd like you to explain, and with your experience, with S&P's experience on a global footprint, how do we think India's downstream market is poised?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Chairman, for the question. And thanks you to CST for inviting me for this panel. The global oil market is going through a turmoil. It's a combination of geopolitics, trade, tariff, which we are seeing start of this year. And if I go back a little and start from the COVID years, historically, the policies around decarbonization of the oil sector is gaining pace when the oil prices are higher. But when oil prices collapse, the decarbonization policies accelerated at that point of time. A lot of countries announced their net zero plans. And as we speak, nearly 80-90% of the GHG emissions are under some kind of net zero announcements. Having said that, only 20 to 25 of the jurisdictions out of 190 globally have legally binding goals on these net zero. So a lot needs to be done. And then 2022 onwards, we saw the Russia-Ukraine conflict, how energy security came back into the center, and it was a trilemma of security, affordability, and sustainability. Having said that, at S&P Global, we take a more realistic view of how the energy system is going to transform moving forward. And we take a calibrated view of the factors which are needed for this transition to happen. We look at how the cost, the scale, and most importantly, the political realities to turn these ambitions into a realistic goals. So what we are expecting is that the very foundation of our energy system is based on the fossil fuels. If we look at last few decades, the fossil fuels have contributed to more than 80% of the global primary energy mix. Moving forward, we do expect the fossil fuels to play a significant role, but their contribution in the global primary energy mix is expected to come down. Renewables will be going up, and in our base case, by 2060, we expect the renewables to form more than 50% of the primary energy mix. Having said that, there are challenges associated with these energy transition moving forward. The four key aspects to this are the energy security is the foremost important thing right now for the countries and the governments. The second is the pace of the energy transition and the economic repercussions related to it. We saw the price energy shocks which have been there in the last few years. The third, which we call, is the North and South divide. What is the form of energy transition for the developed world versus the developing world? And the fourth is the most important one, is the critical mineral supply chain. There's a lot of geopolitics going on around that in this year also. And to put things into perspective, if you look at last year, the three big countries, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and US, produce nearly 40% of the global oil, whereas Chile and Peru are contributing to around 39% of the critical minerals produced globally. And it's a long lead supply chain. If I quote IEA over here, they have put out that for a new mine to come online for production, it takes 15 to 20 years. So there is going to be an issue on critical minerals. Fast forward now, in these next 2 years, if you look at currently, the global oil market is going through a supply surplus. The OPEC Plus is increasing its production. At the same time, on the demand side, the global refined product demand growth is slowing down. It's growing, but the growth is slowing down what we saw historically. And the big contribution of that slowing growth is coming from China. India is still expected to grow moving forward. It's going to be one of the growing economies, and we expect the refined product demand to grow in India. So what this means is that with the current sanctions and tariffs being imposed, with the most recent one from the US on Rosneft Lukoil, and also the EU sanctions which are expected to come in January on the refined products produced through Russian crude, we expect there will be some impact in the market. If, again, going back 2 years, India was hardly importing any oil from Russia. Most of the crude oil of India was coming from Middle East and then Americas, Africa. But now India's 1/3 of the crude oil import is coming from Russia, nearly 1.7, 1.8 million barrels per day. So if there are sanctions imposed by US and they are followed, and there have been a couple of refiners who have gone on and said that they will follow the sanctions and the US, which is going to come online. So it needs to be seen how US production increases next year. We are not expecting a significant production increase from US, but at the same time, India has a very diversified crude import basket. The OPEC Plus production is going to increase, so Middle East can be tapped into easily. There are other production sources from non-OPEC Plus, Brazil, Guyana, Canada is expected to grow. So there are multiple options available for India to diversify further its crude basket if India is not able to source crude from Russia because of upcoming sanctions.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thanks so much. I think India is and will continue to be a bright spot in the global economy. We've always been and will continue to be very resilient. And I think when a door closes, several windows also open. Indian refiners have relationships not just with one country, but with diverse countries in terms of crude supplies. And if we see the dynamics, global dynamics, we see the tariffs, we see all that, crude prices have been more or less with a window of plus minus $5 per barrel. They have not moved much. I think that's a messaging in the terms of the availability of crude, which is also displayed by International Energy Agency and yourself, and so many other, consultancies who actually look at crude supplies. There is also a rethinking on the global majors to go back and work on the fossil fuel, whether it is gas or oil. So, it is going to stay, particularly with the policy framework and the directions which the US has been so vociferously projecting within their own nation as well as internationally, having stopped the renewable projects and having a lot of stress on the creation of assets, particularly in wind, solar in the US, I think is a very clear-cut messaging that the oil and gas is there, and hopefully there'll be sufficient and plenty for India to be the bright spot in terms of demand growth and also having leverage to source crude from many countries. Having said that, let's just re-steer the discussion now to the second essence of the refinery sector, the refining petrochemical sector, which is sustainability. Now, we know there has been in the past, and every country has had that, we have had always a policy support, a pricing mechanism, a viability gap funding to support industry in the space of renewables. If you look at the solar sector also in India, when we started in 2010-11, we had a price point of something like 16 to 17 rupees a unit, which is now 2.2, 2.3 rupees a unit. And if we see the same trend in terms of the cost curve, in terms of technology development, it will be replicated in all that we do. Critical minerals, which you mentioned, is a very important aspect in moving the needle towards lowering the prices, whether we look at EVs, we look at electrolyzers, we look at the space wherein we are looking at green energy, green power to fuel our mobility or even domestic solutions or industry solutions. Now, I'll move to the journey of the biofuels, which has been a great success. And we have the ethanol blending program, which has been a great success to upward of 20%. And there's more. Government has also opened up given the mandate that if in case people want, they can even export ethanol, so from an important country, we are now soon becoming an exporting country also, competitively across the globe. Now, I'll move to MD NRL, Mr. Bhaskar Phukan. NRL has invested in the biorefinery project in Northeast. And I'm sure there must have been a lot of difficulties in getting that on track. And there would also be, in your mind, some of the interventions one can do to make such technologies become more adoptable, more reliable, scalable, as well as both looking at the supply chain and end of it in terms of feedstock, as well as the operation aspect of such a technology. Would you like to share some of the experiences and guide the audience as to what are the things that they should keep in mind looking at such investments in such sectors and technologies?
Mr. Kla, thank you so much for the question, but unfortunately, Mr. Phukan had to excuse himself from the panel.
Okay, so I'm going to fill it in for the audience. So the ABRPL plant in Numaligarh was inaugurated by Honorable PM. It makes about 180 KLPD of bioethanol along with other products. And it has been a success story in terms of the project implementation, which EL was a part. And we hope that the learnings from there would reduce particularly the catalyst, the enzyme requirement, which is a major cost in OPEX. So having said that, I move on to Mr. Bhartan. And I think HPCL has also been reshaping, and he mentioned in his first comment, adoption of critical low carbon technologies. We would like you to share with the audience, you also run an R&D, you have a very vibrant innovation platform out there. Can you share with the audience what kind of other interventions to make yourself more sustainable to meet the net zero commitments are you looking at in terms of as a corporate in HPCL?
Yeah. When we talk about sustainability, there is a wide range of solutions that are actually required to be implemented. I'll mention a couple of them which we are taking it forward to the next level. One is, I will just start from the refinery petrochemical integration. We are all looking at a single-step process to convert into crude into materials. So we are actively trying to demonstrate a technology which will achieve that single-step crude to olefins and aromatics. So that is step number one. Why it is sustainability is this will reduce the carbon footprint by as much as 30% when you make the petchem. This is one area in the conventional field. Coming to alternate energies, energy storage we believe is a key for process industries to convert 100% into renewable power, and we are actively working on energy storage systems. Whatever is will come at with a very good and with a reliable and cheap cost. That is the second major area. Third major area is the biofuels. Biofuels, be it the 2G ethanol, which is still we are in the development phase. It can be the biodiesel, where we are still looking at some viable solutions. Sustainable aviation fuel, which many of us have declared few projects, and we ourselves are implementing a project in one of our refinery. Apart from co-processing solutions, we are implementing. These are some of the few. Now there are some more variation to the natural gas and the biogas, the natural gas and biogas story, which itself is going to improve the sustainability. We have going to demonstrate a patented process called HCNG, which is a water-free, carbon-free process for making HCNG with the value-added byproduct carbon nanotube, which we believe will make this process self-sustaining and it will be economic. So that is one more pioneer effort that is going on. There are many other things. I think many of the people here, are at least quite a few, have visited our R&D. They'll be knowing more details on that, and the time is short, so I will not elaborate more. I just thought I will highlight 3 or 4 areas alone. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Bhartan. Matt, in UOP, you have recently also signed an MOU with NTPC, Green Energy, for looking at SAF production using UOP's technology. And there is a lot of carbon capture happening in the power plants in NTPC, which is akin to what we see in the refining sector as we go along, refining petrochemical sector. So my question to you is, one, what are the technologies which you think, leading on to this, can come into for adoption in our industry? And second, is there any element of collaboration which you think could scale this up or accelerate this adoption?
So the first wave of SAF projects were all underpinned through the heifer route. But the reality is now used cooking oil availability is significantly constrained, and so you need to start looking at alternative feedstocks. So we have ethanol to jet, methanol to jet, and we'll be launching our biomass to jet very shortly. And having those technology pathways really should enable the more rapid adoption now that UCO feedstock is starting to become constrained. I think, how do you accelerate other paths to market? So for us, we recently launched our catalyst-coated membrane, which is to reduce or improve the energy efficiency on the electrolyzers for green hydrogen production. So we are working very closely with OEMs to commercialize that technology, which gives them an advantage. So I think this partnership in the ecosystem between R&D, technology companies, OEMs, and end customers is very critical to accelerate the adoption. With those 3 or 4 partners together, you can deploy technology a lot faster than commercial or typical contractual arrangements between business to business. So again, that's where we look to bring these partnerships together to help accelerate time to market.
Thanks, Matt. I quite agree. I think no single company can work on their own. Reinventing the wheel doesn't make any sense because it doesn't meet the timeline which the market today demands. So collaborating and working together, looking at the possibility of stitching the technology, the end user, particularly the case in point that you mentioned is extremely important. And we really hope that such initiatives or such collaborations are going to scale the movement. And if we just see some numbers, in 2025, roughly $1.8 trillion was invested in green energy space all over the world, while $1 trillion went into the fossil fuel space. So clearly the world as a whole is moving. In fact, when Gaurav mentioned the North and the South, this is also relevant because as I heard in one of the panels a couple of years ago, where the African nations mentioned that let us first carbonize and then ask us to decarbonize. So I think the dynamics of different regions, different geographies are different. But the good point is that India as a nation has formulated policies. The receptiveness of the government is to create an ecosystem, whether we call of National Green Hydrogen Mission, or we talk of the Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Yojana, or we talk of the CBG sector, or we talk of the pricing of ethanol. These have all been enablers to build in the ecosystem, sustain it with the efficiency within, and then lower the price points with respect to the operations as well as bringing new technologies on the go. I'll from here move on to Mr. Anders Olsen, and similar question, like green hydrogen, SAF, ethanol. You've been, Topsoe has literally shifted most of its work, even if it's direct air capture, all the other imperatives which will shift the very nature of technology portfolio towards offering sustainable solutions. So we would be really delighted for you if you would share some of the such initiatives which Halder Topsoe has taken and how they can impact our Indian industry.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much, Vatika. And yes, you are right. We have definitely transitioned not just our company name for decades. Many of you know we were Halder Topsoe. We changed the name to Topsoe, but it's not just a name change. We have significantly changed the direction of the company. We have invested a large amount of money in an SOEC manufacturing facility in Denmark. And it was mentioned in the first panel also, alkaline electrolysis is relatively inefficient, whereas SOEC electrolysis is much, much more efficient. Granted, we still have a CapEx challenge, but we are definitely working on that. And I strongly believe that will be one of the future pillars for the future energy mix. But also coming back to the renewables, and obviously I agree with my colleague from UOP, it is a feedstock challenge, but we need all of the above, right? We need renewable feedstocks, we need electrolysis, we need to utilize all the renewable options we have to create a more sustainable world. And I think it's fair to say India is actually doing it already. We could, of course, wish for more acceleration and more speed. But while other countries none mentioned, none forgotten, but seem to be slowing down a little bit. I think there is a lot of traction still around the world, even if one of the big countries seems to be slowing down. I strongly believe we are heading in the right direction. Yes, it may be slightly slower than we had wished, but it is going in the right direction. And we are definitely ready to supply the technologies, whether it be the ones I mentioned earlier, or you could say the more future solutions for the green hydrogen. I think the world is ready. We just need to get going, and India is in a fantastic place to be right in the middle of it, as I see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. I think your statement reposes the faith in the interventions that have happened. And I think we are very confident. We are working on all fronts, and it is necessary to work on all fronts so that we don't miss any bus, any time, and we climb on to all to meet both our commitment to deliver the products at the right price, as well as also look at the footprint of CO2 and all other GHG emissions. So I'll move on to Mr. Nicholas. And in fact, Gaurav mentioned about critical minerals. So we can't have the panel without this, the supply chain of critical raw materials, critical minerals, rare metals, particularly in the business that you do. So would it be possible for you to share with us how you see the world, what are the strategies, what are the future catalyst developments, and what would work for the Indian industry for ensuring this resilient supply for the next gen catalysts?
That's a broad question, but let me start on critical minerals, or rather minerals from a catalyst perspective. Rare earths, the term rare earth is used in the context of magnets, superactive magnets, and certainly in geopolitical terms recently. But some of you may recall about 15 years ago when the supply of lanthanides, basically the rare earth used in FCC, was limited from China. Prices increased 100-fold. That resulted in a big spike. It resulted in innovation by catalyst companies to work around and come up with FCC catalysts that would perform equally well, but without those rare earths, or just only a minute amount. So whatever situation we end up with regarding critical minerals, I think there is a periodic table. We'll go to the periodic table and we'll figure something out. I mean, necessity drives innovation. We have seen that time and again. But let's not, it would be nice if we don't have to wait for innovation each time someone ends up in a spitting contest with another country. So on the hydrotreating side, nickel, cobalt, molybdenum, we know these minerals some of these are mined in conflict areas, and certainly as Ketjen, we do not take that as feedstock, as raw materials. There might be competition for molybdenum, for cobalt, on the electrification value chain. Nickel is also a mineral that's sought after by many other industries outside the catalyst industry. So what we do is we diversify our supply chains, make sure you're not single-sourced on a country where people would raise their eyebrows, or where you could end up being shut off. But at least as important is we have learned to reuse the metals, the minerals from the spent catalyst in hydrotreating quite effectively. Now, again, thermodynamics might be against you. There is a bit of energy that needs to be exerted, and as long as the supply of fresh metals is fairly cheap, you may not do it. But we have anticipated a situation where metals, the cost of metals will, again, perhaps not increase 100-fold, but 5-fold or 10-fold. and we are able to set up our recycling programs and thus supply a large portion of our the catalyst that we produce today. Now, looking at that from an Indian context, today the catalyst production in India is present at a, I would say, a modest scale. It's a good start. I think certainly on the FCC side, if anyone ever were to produce large-scale FCC catalyst, I think most of the raw materials would be available in country. We've done some feasibility studies and seen that the supply is there. There is one issue I think that you need to contend with is the price level. Current FCC catalyst specifically, but most other catalysts are actually being purchased on a cost parity to the US Gulf Coast. Why is that? Because in the US, most companies, Ketchen, as Topsoe and others, have large production facilities in the US and they're being imported into India. So India is benefiting from the scale and the cost standards at US Gulf Coast. And if you make the comparison to prices in India for the same raw materials, I'm sorry to say, but they're substantially higher. Of course, some of that comes from the inferred energy cost of producing, say, sodium hydroxide, which actually is sodium chloride with energy. And today, the price of energy in India is higher. So in terms of security of supply, innovation, I think, will always be one of our friends, and we continue to innovate. Recycling is very important, and there is an economic trade-off to be made. And ultimately, if you want to be self-sufficient, you have to acknowledge the fact that it may come at a price, but at least it allows you to continue to operate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nicholas. We have about 7 to 8 minutes. I'll head to a question to Gaurav, and then maybe we can have a single messaging from all our esteemed panelists. So, Gaurav, how would you share how you see and would like to message in terms of India's refining sector evolving in the future, and how do they strategically position themselves in the global market? India exports products today, and in the future, how do you see the sector evolving, let's say, in the next 10 years or so?
Sure, thank you for the question. And let me start from the macroeconomic point of view. India is one of the fastest growing economy in the world. And in our view, we expect India to continue to grow on average 6% for next decade or so. So there are additional advantages for India in terms of demographics, in terms of the support from the government in infrastructure build, and also the growing economy with contributions coming from the services sector also. So because of all these factors, we expect the demand of refined products in India to continue to grow despite the other forms of energy coming in the overall mix in India. The demand, in our view, in India is expected to increase from current 4.6 million barrels per day to more than 7 million barrels per day by 2050. The transportation fuels will continue to remain the major component of the refined products in India. However, the fastest growing products, in our view, is naphtha and jet fuel. Naphtha, of course, because it provides feedstock for the petrochemical sector, and the growth of petrochemical in India is expected to be exponential moving forward. We are currently around single-digit per capita consumption when it comes to petrochemicals, and the global average is in double digits. So there's a lot of potential moving forward, and as economy grows, the petrochemical demand is also expected to grow. As you rightly said, India is a net exporter of products, and we expect India to continue to remain a net exporter of products. There are capacities coming up in India, around 850 KBD in different phases of completion as of now. Because of that, we expect the export position of India to increase for next 5-6 years. But as the global and refined products demand slows down in those export markets, primarily Western Hemisphere, we expect a lot of those export volumes start routing to the domestic market. Despite that, we expect India to add a refining capacity beyond the current projects also. In terms of the biofuels, as was mentioned earlier, despite the increased penetration of ethanol in the gasoline pool, remarkable achievement for India to meet the 20% of blending, the SAF is another one which is coming up in few years down the line. So these are strategic fuels, in my view, for India to expand the overall product mix in the energy mix of the country, and also be a self-reliant moving forward. Energy security is something which is really needed, and we are all seeing that in the current geopolitics mix. Having said that, the downstream sector as a whole is one of the strategic advantage for the India. India has the potential to continue to be a regional refining hub. There are investors who are looking at the refining sector in India because of the growth in the demand which is expected, while the rest of the world is expected to slow down or see a decline in refined products demand.
Thank you, Gaurav. So we've had a great discussion spanning from the refining sector, the interventions of in the existing assets, newer refineries, biofuels, minerals, and everything. If I were to sum up and if I were to ask you, each of you, to just give a 30-second single line or a few words as to what is your message to the refining industry or the energy industry in India. So just 30 seconds of your key message to the sector. Mr. Bharatan, would you like to go first, please?
Think big, adopt technology, use RD&D, research, development and deployment as a key tool. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Mr. Spalding, would you like to share your 30-second thought?
Sure. So I think India needs to be bold and to take some risks to deploying new technologies if they want to be at the forefront of petrochemical production globally, as well as deploying new feedstocks into renewable space.
Thank you. Mr. Olson.
Yeah, and I will almost piggyback on that. I think India should lead and take up the vacuum that other large nations are leaving behind. I think India has a fantastic opportunity to lead this energy transition.
Thank you. Mr. Nicholas?
Think big, but start small. Meaning, don't wait until you have a perfect solution. Go do it now. You're going to need some catalyst in between, and we're happy to partner with you. One other thing, in Europe, the blending rules, the mass balance rules around circularity, well, I don't know, I can't find the right words for it, but it's a big mess. So please make sure that when you run bio-oils or circular plastics, which will give a benefit, that you don't, when you run them through your assets, make sure you don't get caught out by some regulations or some government frameworks that do not allow you to do what actually makes common sense.
Thank you. Mr. Gaurav?
Yeah, I would say that we are looking for energy addition rather than energy displacement. Downstream sector in India is the brightest spot in the India's energy sector. However, refiners needs to reinvent and repurpose to accommodate the changing consumer pattern and also the climate goals.
Thank you so much. And thank you. It's been a delight to chair the session. Even virtually, I felt as if I was right there. And I must thank immensely our esteemed panelists for bringing in so much knowledge, experience, and so much of message for the entire age group which is there in the hall. I think there is a message for all. Let's all think big. Let's all be confident that there will be solutions at all levels for us to adopt. Let us be innovative. Let us be resilient. We tread with care. We tread with caution. And I'm sure the leadership which is today in and continue to be in the sector at all levels, whether it is government level, it is regulatory level, whether it is decision making at an individual corporates or decision making in technology, catalyst, advisory. I think they're all very well positioned to take this sector forward in a more sustainable manner in times to come. Thank you very much, and I thank each of the panelists and audience. I would request you to give them a huge applause for making this session really exciting. Thank you so much.